Well, hello there, ladies and gents. I'm Tammy Sipnewski, and thank you so much for coming by my channel. So let me tell you something. When I'm making these videos, I'm making them the way that I wish I could have watched videos when I was initially learning all the stuff that I needed to know to make the videos for my business channel. I had so many questions about the cameras, the lights, the editing software, everything you can imagine. Here I launched the adventure on YouTube, watching video after video after video, learning all of the things I needed to know. But it seemed like the videos I was watching, I would gather little pieces of information from each and every one. But it seemed like there was never that one video that explained every single thing that I needed to know to properly expose my camera. Don't get me wrong, guys, I am absolutely thankful for the videos that I did watch and all of the knowledge that I gained. But my videos, I'm gonna make them the way I wish I could have watched them. I'm gonna answer all of those questions that I had myself when I was investigating what to do. Everyone kept talking about the three things: the magic exposure trinity, the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO. It just seemed like that there was things missing. I'm like, there has to be more than this. Like I'm doing everything that they're saying to do, and my image is still, it's not looking quite right. I am going to make a video on how to properly expose the camera. I'm going to hit on all of those questions I know I had when I was first setting mine up. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing that you need to do when you're setting up your camera is choose your frame rate. 24 frames per second is going to give you the most cinematic look. If you're looking for a reality show type of look or the news kind of look, that's going to be filmed in 30 frames per second. But I always film in 24 frames per second because I just prefer the look of the video when it's filmed in that frame rate. Whatever frame rate that you choose, whether it's 24 or 30. Your next setting after that is going to choose your shutter speed. Now, when it comes to shutter speed, you need to double your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, your shutter speed should be at a 50. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, your shutter speed should be at a 60. So whenever you're filming things like B-roll, or if you're filming sports events and you're thinking you might want to slow down that particular video in editing to give it a more dramatic flair, this is when you'd want to speed up that frame rate. So instead of filming at 24 frames per second, you'd want to go as high as your camera can go. And the highest my camera can go in high definition is 60 frames per second. That means I'm going to make that shutter speed 120 frames. So no matter what you're filming at, you always must double the shutter speed compared to your frame rate. Okay, so the next setting that we're going to talk about is aperture. Now this has to do with your lens and not really your camera. So when you're looking at your lens, there are blades inside of your lens that open up really big or close down really small. So believe it or not, the more wide open that your lens is, the less that aperture number is going to be. So the lens that I'm shooting on right now, the aperture is a 1.8. That means the blades are wide open. This allows for a lot of light to go through the lens and hit the sensor that's in the camera, making this lens really good in low light situations. It also lends to a more dramatic and cinematic look to your videos because it allows for the subject, me, I'm the subject of the video, it allows me to be in focus, but it makes the background out of focus. You see my lights, how they look fuzzy and just more elegant and pretty? That's known as bokeh. So the smaller that aperture number is, the better your bokeh is going to be whenever you're filming videos. A lot of kit lenses don't have fixed apertures. They can go from 3.5 to 5.6. So whenever you're shooting your video, if you want the very best bokeh, try to get that aperture number as low as possible. Okay, so we're almost done with the Trinity here. The next part of the exposure Trinity is going to be your ISO. The best way that I can explain it to you is basically a false light. So every camera goes from like 100 or 200, they always start that low, and then they begin to double. 200, 400, 800, 1600. The higher that ISO number, the more light that your image is going to be. Now, even though it can make that image more light, it doesn't mean that you're getting light from anywhere. It's your camera making false light into your image. So if you have a very high ISO, it's going to make the image lighter, but it's going to make it look more grainy and less appealing. So you always want to get that ISO number as low as possible, either by utilizing your studio lights or using natural lighting. But here's the thing. So when I was doing investigation and learning about the exposure trinity, and I stumbled upon ISO, everyone tells you got to keep that ISO really low, super low, get it as low as you can. Like they are determined that that ISO number has to be as low as possible. I was listening to them. I would crank my studio light. I was adding other lights because I was trying to keep that ISO as low as possible. And then I watched somebody's video who was talking about the exposure trinity, and they were talking about how low your ISO needs to be. And then all of a sudden he shows the back of his camera where his camera settings are. And I'm looking at it and I couldn't believe it. His ISO is set at 800. 800. And I was like, wait, 800? What's going on? What's happening here? I've been killing myself trying to keep my ISO down to 100 or 200. This guy's talking about keeping your ISO low. His camera's planted at 800. What's up with that? So even though they're talking to you about a low ISO number, it doesn't mean that you always have to keep it down to 100 or 200. You can go up to 400 and 800. Maybe 1600, that image starts to fall apart and look grainy, but you can feel comfortable getting to 400 or 800. You don't have to be like me, blaring your lights just so that I can keep that ISO number as low as possible. So when you're setting up your camera, if your ISO gets up to be 400, that's fine. Don't crank your light anymore, trying to drop it down to 200 or 100. You can feel comfortable in that 400 to 800 range as well. Okay, now normally that's where the videos, the tutorials would end. The exposure trinity, and that's good. But I'm like, I feel like something's missing because my image, it's not looking what I think is right. So how do I know that, in fact, the camera really is properly exposed? Like, I think like there should be more. And in fact, there really is something more, something beyond the exposure trinity that you guys really need to be dialed into in order to get the best image for your video. So I'm going to grab my B camera, show you the back to walk you through a few other things that really can help you out to make sure that you have the correct and proper settings in your camera when you're doing your videos. There is something very important on the back of the screen that I wanted you to see because in all of the videos that I watch, it seemed like they decided to leave this out. I don't know whether they forgot or really what the excuse was, but in all the videos that I watched talking about the Trinity, they always seem to leave this particular thing out. And you guys, it's super important. So I'm going to point it out right now to you. You see this thing right here that has the -3 above it and the minus and then the plus sign? This is going to be your exposure meter. This is what you need to look at to see if your camera is properly exposed. Now you want that notch always to be comfortably on the 0. I prefer an underexposed image myself, so if it falls below 0, that's fine with me. So if that meter falls in the negative area, that means that you need more light in your image. Your camera is underexposed. You either need to pump more light into your image, or you need to open your aperture, or you need to increase your ISO. Now, if it's the other way around, if it is in the plus area, that means it's overexposed. You need to reduce the light. You need to close the aperture, or you need to reduce the ISO. There's always something you can do to get that guy comfortably on 0. Now that's the thing that when I was watching videos, no one ever pointed this thing out and talked about how important it is and what it means and what to do to get this right. So that's why I felt like it was super important for me to tell you, point that out, keep your eye on that whenever you're doing the settings for your camera before you hit record, to just check that exposure meter to make sure that you're okay. Another important element is to set your white balance, and you can do that with a gray card or having a few sheets of white paper stacked together. One sheet's not going to cut it. It could be a little transparent and you're not going to get an accurate reading. But your best bet is to get a gray card on Amazon. You can pick them up for like $7. Now, I can't teach you how to do it because a lot of cameras are very different. You should go ahead on YouTube, hit in how to do white balance for your specific camera, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty options for you to choose from. Let's say you're not good at setting white balance, or it's a huge inconvenience, or you don't have the gray card. The technology in the cameras are really good, and the auto white balance is probably going to get you very close to what you would get if you set the white balance yourself, or you can set it according to your environment. I know my camera has a setting for daylight, fluorescent bulbs, or if you're outside on a cloudy day, go ahead and choose one or choose the auto white balance, but don't ever have it in a setting where you're not currently using the camera. So let's say if you're set to fluorescent bulbs and you're outside, the image is going to look terrible. If at all possible, set the white balance. And if you can't, rock that auto white balance. Don't just leave it in any old setting. It is so important to have it on the right one. So the other thing that's in your camera that maybe you don't understand how it works, or you see it there but you're not really even sure what it's doing, is the histogram. And that is usually set up in the corner, and it's just a bunch of wavy lines in a box. And you don't know what that is or what it means, what exactly it's telling you. So each side of that histogram is going to represent the highlights and the shadows. And the most simplistic way for me to explain that histogram to you is to make sure that nothing is very close to either one of the sides. Try to get that histogram away from the sides and have the buildup of it as close to the middle as possible. But, just because something is a little higher on one side and lower on the one side and not totally in the middle, that's fine too, as long as it's not totally bogged out, peaked out, all on one side, you're going to be fine. So here's my plan. I am going to make the videos on my channel the way I wish I could have watched videos when I was first investigating what to do with my camera, what to do with my lights, how to set everything up, how to properly expose my camera. It seemed like no matter the videos I was watching, no single one video answered all of the questions that I had, and I couldn't understand why. I had to watch video after video after video just to find one little piece of information here, another little piece of information there, and maybe at the end of the day, after I watched like 50 videos, I could have a better understanding about my camera. It felt like there was always something missing from the videos, and I didn't understand why. So in the videos that I'm going to be making, I'm going to bring the whole puzzle piece out to you and just lay it flat, because I have no interest in selling you classes or selling you LUT packages or selling you anything. I just want you guys to come on my channel, subscribe to my channel, like my videos, and I hope that they're helpful to you, because I'm making videos the way I wish I could have watched videos when I was first finding out what the hell to do with my YouTube studio. So if that sounds like something you're interested, please hit the like and subscribe button, and let's get down to business.